Good morning or afternoon for some of you. Hello, my name is Elizabeth Brown, and I am the Director of Government Relations and Professional Development here at the North American Invasive Species Management Association. I'm very excited to be moderating today's event. I certainly enjoyed last year's and learned a lot. Looking forward to today's event. With that, I'm going to introduce NAISMA's Executive Director, Belle Bergner, for our welcome.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Let me know if you can't hear me just fine. I will assume you can. And I'll just echo Elizabeth by welcoming everyone today to the 2022 Edmaps Summit. We are coming to you from all over North America, but we are so thrilled to be able to partner with Edmaps based at the University of Georgia. And we are so grateful to our sponsors. Thank you so much to all of these generous sponsors for making today's event possible. So I'm going to give just a little bit of a welcome and tell you a little bit about NAISMA for those who don't know. I see many of our members are here today, and those who are not members, thank you for joining us, and I'm excited that you're part of our community today. Our mission is to support, promote, and empower invasive species prevention and management across North America. What better way can we do this? One of the best ways we can do this is using consistent tools that everyone is using, such as Edmaps. But really, what NAISMA tries to do is our goals are to provide value to the invasive species management community, you. We aim to make your work easier, and we aim to provide a safe community that bridges geographic and jurisdictional divides. Again, Edmaps, as you'll see today, is one of the best tools that makes that happen. And we hope that we are providing value to you today, and we hope that your work is easier after learning how you can use this wonderful tool even better. So for a couple of minutes, I'm going to tell you a bit about what we do for those who don't know, so you know where you can deepen your involvement and professional development through what NAISMA offers. We support international standards, including mapping standards, our certified weed-free products program. We advocate for the needs of invasive species management through National Invasive Species Awareness Week. We provide outreach to the public about the importance and critical issues around invasive species. We provide a prevention and outreach tool, our program Play Clean Go. I'll talk about in a little bit and show you some of our tools. And we offer a variety of professional development opportunities, including today's webinar and other certification programs and our annual conference. Speaking of our conference, we will be in Florida in November. Please save the dates. And if you are inclined to submit an abstract, that deadline has been extended to April 15th. So start thinking about what you'd like to present. And if not, just please join us. It's going to be a fantastic conference in partnership with the Florida Invasive Species Council. We really do bring in people from all over the continent to our conference. And so you get to be a part of a community and feel like you're not the only one struggling with the same issues. Everyone is struggling with the same or similar issues. You'll come and get a bigger perspective on your work by joining us this November. I'll talk a minute now about Play Clean Go, which is a program that provides turnkey, ready-to-use graphics and outreach products to integrate into your communications and outreach. We do this by providing a graphic library that has banner ads, graphic media, graphic design options, printable brochures, rack cards, you name it. There's a variety of graphic tools that are ready for you to plug into your channels. Here's an example of one of the rack cards that you can download and print on your own. And these are also customizable. So we work with partners to incorporate your local message that's important for you. There's also a store where we sell prevention tools and other outreach products, including handheld boot brushes, trail signs, boot brush interpretive panels, boot brush stations with interpretive panels, buckthorn blasters, and more. The boot brush stations have been incredibly successful. We redesigned them with USDA APHIS support a couple of years ago to make them even easier to use, more engaging, and meet federal agency standards. So they are now placed literally across North America. And again, you know, in keeping with our goals and our mission, we want to have wheels that you do not need to recreate. And so clearly our partners and other organizations are using these wheels rather than recreate their own across the landscape. Professional development. So in addition to today's summit and monthly webinars, we have on-demand professional trainings. Our mapping standards training was just launched in December, and we are about to launch 2 new certificates, including Foundations of Invasive Species Management and Terrestrial Invasive Plant or Noxious Weed Management. As a member, I know many of you here today are members. We provide even more ways for you to get involved in the community, share your voice, and have a say in how NAISMA supports the invasive species community and what we advocate for. So as a member, you get access to our network through our membership portal. We have a monthly networking hour virtual meeting. It's really fun, different topics every month. You get access to a huge library of webinars, those Play, Clean, Go outreach tools. There are even more in the member area, and discounts on a variety of things, including the store products, annual meeting registration, and professional development trainings. And so if our members here today feel inclined, I see many of you on here, I'd love it if you type in the chat, you know, what is the membership benefit that you find most valuable? What is it that you love about this community? And share that with everyone here today. Here's just a plug for those First Friday networking hours that are really great to bridge our divides across the continent. And with that, I'm going to wrap it up. And again, thank our sponsors for making today's event possible. Thank you, Invasive Species Center in Canada, the Center for Invasive Species and Ecosystem Health at the University of Georgia, the Washington State Invasive Species Council, Colorado Department of Agriculture, Montana Department of Agriculture, Minnesota Invasive Species Advisory Council, and the Utah Weed Supervisor Association. So with that, thank you so much for joining us. And I will turn it over now to Chuck Bargeron, the director of the Center for Invasive Species and Ecosystem Health.
Thanks, Bill, and thanks everybody for joining us today. Let's go. All right. So just want to thank NAISMA for hosting us again this year, and thank the sponsors again for making this event free and available for all of y'all to attend. All of these presentations will be available again on the Edmaps website and the NAISMA YouTube channel after the presentations are over, or in the next couple of weeks. So with that, let's dive right in. We've got a great agenda, and hopefully y'all will learn a lot. Keep the questions coming in the chat or in the questions section, and we'll either answer those after each talk or at the end of the day as part of the questions part. So I wanted to start off and kind of give us a overview of Edmaps and some of the new things that we've done in the past year and are planning. And then later we're going to talk about things we're planning to do and where we're going with it. I'm, as Belle said, the director of the University of Georgia Center for Invasive Species and Ecosystem Health, or Bugwood as we're sometimes known as. We are a collaboration between the College of Agriculture and Environmental Sciences and the School of Forestry and Natural Resources at the University of Georgia. And we focus on projects related to invasive species, integrated pest management, and forest health. And as with our Edmaps program, a lot of what we do is focused on information technology and providing tools for the public, for scientists and professionals. And doing that requires a lot of partnerships. And we're located in South Georgia, but we work all over the US and in Canada and Mexico. And unlike a lot of university-based centers, we are strictly focused on outreach and extensions. So our mission is to, build these partnerships and provide information technologies, tools, as well as the training to go along with those. And yeah, that does sometimes require some research to figure out the best solution for problems, but we're not focused on that research part of the land grant system. We're focused on the outreach part. So I'm going to start off and I'm going to give you a little bit of an introduction to Edmaps in case we have some new users here. And then I'm going to look at where we've been over the past year, some recent updates, and then how we took the feedback we got last year to help come up with today's agenda. So what is Edmaps? Edmaps stands for Early Detection and Distribution Mapping Center System, although we really don't even use that anymore, but that's where the name came from. It was built with really four main goals. We wanted a way to do real-time tracking of invasive species and pest occurrences. We wanted a way to have maps and distribution information that would work both at the local level and at the national and even international level, and then provide a way to do electronic early detection and rapid response by taking systems that were normally done by phone calls or emails and making all of that integrated, and then tying that to our already existing library of images through invasive.org, through forestry images, through the Bugwood image system, and resources tied to those images. So all of that kind of gets packaged together. And we did this with the idea that we wanted to make it easy. We wanted to make invasive species mapping as easy as possible so we could increase the public awareness of the invasive species issue, facilitate that local early detection and rapid response, but then move out to the landscape size scale and be able to aggregate data from a lot of different sources into one place. And then now that all that data is coming together, be able to show change over time to better tell the story of invasive species management. And you're going to learn more about that through the different talks today. And then have that Edmaps core as a platform for additional applications. And I'm going to talk about some of those additional applications this afternoon. When we're talking about Edmaps and we're talking about data, what kind of data are we talking about? And it's fairly simple. It's what did you see? Who are you? Where did you see it? When did you see it? How much did you see? Do you know why it was there? And when did you see it? And how much of it was there? And so whether that is an insect, an animal, or a plant infestation, these are the core concepts. And so when we're talking about data, this is what we're talking about, and this is the scope of what we're talking about. And so we really tried to break down each early detection and rapid response action and then what kind of information was needed. And so we started out and we said, okay, well, what species needed to be reported? What do we need to make it as easy as possible for users to be able to report new things as well as things that are pretty well established, and how, what tools can they use to be able to report those things, and then once it goes into the system, who has jurisdiction, and then let's look at it and see, okay, is this something new to the county, new to the state, new to the US or Canada, even new to North America? And then let's do an assessment on that and go, okay, is the identification of what the person reported it as correct? Has a risk assessment for this species been done? And if so, what kind of management options are available? And then once there are management options available, how do we document that, and how do we document whether or not it was effective? So all of this, goes in to the background of when you pick up your phone and you take an app and you take a picture and you report it through the system. And to have a background from that, we started out by collecting, and we're still collecting, as much distribution data as we could from all different sources: USDA Plants Database, the Forest Service Forest Inventory and Analysis System. Anybody that had data related to invasive species, we took that data, pulled it together, and added it into one single database. And by doing that, we've been able to collect a lot of data across the US and Canada. And this just kind of gives you an idea of the 6 million records within Edmaps, where those records are located throughout the US and Canada. And obviously, some of the larger counties, some of the larger jurisdictions are going to show more data, but it's a pretty good view of where data is across the US and Canada. And so I've talked a lot about the early detection rapid response stage of the invasion curve, but with what we're going to show you today and what we're moving toward, we're focusing more on this. We've built the tools for the first part, and now we're building and improving the tools for the second part. For once something is established, how do you manage it? How do you document that management? And how do you adapt over time as you're in that establishment phase? And then once all this data is collected and put in this database, how do we use what is called the FAIR data standards to make sure that data is easily available to managers, to researchers, to modelers, to whoever needs to use that data and integrate it into whatever system they have. And so, there's a lot of ways to do data. And what we're trying to do and are doing with Edmaps is providing a platform that's focused on invasive species and pest data, and then can be integrated with your other data systems that exist. And we're doing that by thinking about what the audience is, who is using this data, and adapting the tools and the interfaces for those different users. And so if it's a casual user who needs a field guide, then there's the Edmaps app and website. If it's a more professional user, they don't need the field guide. They're collecting a lot of data. They want the most efficient way of doing that. Then it's the Edmaps Pro app. We're capturing data for iNaturalists, for the public that are just reporting things they see, and they may happen to be invasives. And so we're taking that and pulling that out. We built the Wild Spotter app as a tool to document invasive species on Forest Service and other public lands. And then we're providing these data downloads that Rebecca is going to talk about later as a way for researchers to take the data and do something with it. And we've come a long way since Edmaps started in 2005, 2006. The website is drastically different, and we launched the I've Got One app, which was the first smartphone app we did for reporting in Florida in 2011, and that has now grown to a whole suite of apps for different purposes. And what we've really been trying to consolidate over the last few years, and we talked about this a lot last year, is initially Edmaps was really working with regional or state networks and building apps or building tools that would work for that region or that state. And so because of the overhead that takes to maintain over time, we decided let's roll everything into one Edmaps app and start retiring these older apps. And we're still in the process of doing that and getting users over to the Edmaps platform, the Edmaps app platform. And what we've done with the Edmaps app is the first thing that happens when you open that app is it asks you what state or province you're in. And so by doing that, we're able to tailor the species list to that particular area that you're reporting in. So while we had duplicate apps, while we had these, not duplicate apps, but we had these apps focused on different regions, and we did that because the species vary from region to region, obviously. And so by allowing the user to choose a state, then they're able to get species as well as field guides that are tailored to the area of the country that they're in. And by doing this, we're also able to push updates to the app. So each time you open that app, it goes and it says, hey, server, do we have any new species to add today? And server says yes, or the server says no. And if it says yes, it downloads those new species onto the phone. So you've got those additional species without us having to push an update to the App Store. And we're also working with some of our partners to incorporate custom branding into the app. So when you go into the Edmaps app, you still get your state or your area's logo, you still get that look and feel, but it's through the Edmaps platform. And then there's the Edmaps Pro app, and we're going to talk about that off and on a lot today. But you know, that app allows you to do what we call revisits, to go back to an area and provide more information about the infestation at that area. It allows you to do a lot of things offline, have background maps that are offline. It allows you to do custom querying, saving those custom queries, and allows you to pull in a lot of information. And so there's a lot more I'm going to talk about as we go through this, but this is really our flagship tool and our professional tool. And I want to make sure as we talk about Edmaps that we're not just talking about an app, we're talking about a program. And the reason that it's more than just an app is because of the educational and outreach side of it. We work very closely with our partners to meet their needs and adapt the programs that we have to meet what they need. And so we started this annual summit. We're going to talk later about doing monthly office hours. You know, we do in-person presentations as well as virtual presentations, and we have a good library of PDF and PowerPoint presentations that you can take and train your local audiences, and so you don't even need us to be involved. And so I just want to make sure that that is part of this conversation as we go through this. So where are we today? We consider Edmaps the ultimate aggregator, pulling all this data together, tools both at the national, state, and regional level, all the way down to a local SISMA level. And we're really trying to shift our focus. We've built the tools for data collection. Now we're focused on how you, our users, can use these tools to solve your problems on a daily basis. So how's it going? What's the data look like for the last year? We had almost 4,000 different individuals or different organizations reporting into Edmaps last year. 175,000 new reports came through the system, and we averaged 479 new reports each and every day coming into Edmaps, covering about 1,000 species during that time period. And then here is that map that we saw earlier, but adapted to where data came in 2021, and viewing it from that perspective. And then what kind of data we're getting? You know, obviously a large chunk of that is positive data, but we're increasingly seeing, and over the last year, about 40% of the data was negative data. And then the important piece in my mind is that 14% of data that is treated data, where we had documented that something was done to that infestation, either as the report came in or later as part of a revisit. We're still seeing a majority of the data coming in through the website, but also through the smartphone and both iPhone and Android apps, as well as through our APIs. We pull data from other systems like iNaturalist. And then still about 17% of the data is coming in through bulk sources, where somebody collects data in another data system and then sends it to us to incorporate. A large percentage, over 80% of the data coming in is focused on plants, but we've still got that chunk of insects, a smaller chunk of wildlife, and then just right under 1% of plant pathogens and animal pathogens included in there as well. So what I was interested in is, okay, we know we've got a lot of plant data, but let's dive deeper into the non-plant data and see what that data is made up of. And so we've got a huge portion of that data that is focused on piercing and sucking insects, and that is because of there's a network called the suction trap network that takes and traps different insect species, and that data is all going into Edmaps. So we know that's there, but then once you go past that, then you really see, okay, well, there's the foliage feeding insects. That makes sense. There's a lot of those that are pests and invasive species, and then the reptiles. But it's interesting to see things like, worms and leeches, as well as birds showing up on and fish showing up on this list of species that are coming in through the system last year. And one thing I'm really proud of when I ran this number is 97% of the records in Edmaps have been verified. So we know there's cases where data comes in and the verifier is not as active and it doesn't get verified quickly, but throughout the entire system, over 97% of the data has been verified. And that is because of our great network of verifiers across the country. We're over 800 now that get those emails when the data comes in, and they go through and verify that data and decide, okay, yes, this is what it is, or this is not what it is, and this record needs to be removed or deleted from the system. Looking at data by state, and obviously you're going to hear from some folks from Utah and Minnesota today. And we heard from some of our partners in Ontario last year, but we really can see that the states and the provinces that have very active programs and doing a lot of promotion is where a lot of the data is coming in from. And then that kind of tracks down depending on different projects and different areas of the country. But a good distribution throughout a lot of the states, and that this continues to change and is not always the same every year. This year I included both original reports and revisits, so you kind of get that concept of both, new data coming in, whether it be a revisit or a point data. We talked a lot last year about the iNaturalist import routine and how we're triaging that data, the research grade data from iNaturalist, and that's coming into Edmaps, and we've moved over 400,000 records from the iNaturalist system into Edmaps, and then our verifiers have said about 200,000 of those records do not need to be there, and so they've been ignored and are species that individual state is not tracking or working with for different reasons. So some of the recent updates that we've done, one of the things we've done, and I've mentioned this a few times, is we've taken what was Edmaps was really a US focused system from the main website, and now we've integrated both the Alberta and Ontario Edmaps systems into the main Edmaps site. So all of the maps now show both the US and Canada, and all of the maps through Edmaps have been updated to show that change, and we're continuing to work with different partners to expand Edmaps into more of the Canadian provinces as well. We've also updated all of the point maps, and one of the big things we did as part of that, Canada Thistle's got the most records in Edmaps, and if you would go to this page, it would take you a few minutes for all these records, over 200,000 records, to load. And so we decided to cache those large data sets, and so now that data for Canada Thistle and the other species that have a lot of records all come through and are available almost instantly when you open that page. We've also changed the clustering from just showing clusters to showing these pie charts, so you get an idea of where things are positive versus treated or eradicated. So really, again, working on changing that story of what clustering looks like within the system. We replaced Google Maps with OpenStreetMaps. This was done because Google started charging for views on their maps. And so as we want to expand and allow Edmaps maps to be embedded in other websites and news articles and other places, this way we don't get a surprise with a high bill 1 month because this map got included in a newspaper article that went viral, and it shows up and gets a lot of traffic. So I think this is the OpenStreetMap platform allows for us to do a lot of things we were not able to do on Google Maps. And it's just a little bit different look of a map, but it still has the satellite imagery. It still has a couple of different terrain views that you can look at and still see the data in those different platforms. Once you click on a record and you go to the individual species, this record detail page, as we call it, has been updated and really enhanced to show very quickly the original record, the current status of that species, and any revisits that have been done on it. And we've kept this view as Google Maps in order for you to be able to do stuff like the Google Maps Street View. So you can go and actually look and see exactly where that species is, especially if it's close to a road and the Google Street View is available. Another thing we've done, and this was done to help just standardize across all of Edmaps, but also help our colorblind users to be able to see the differences between the colors. We've gone to a standard color palette for all of our points on our maps, whether they be in the apps or on the website. And so, you'll start seeing this consistently of all the reds will be this red, all of the yellows, all the greens, blues, etc. One of the huge tasks last year was working with revisits. Revisits were initially done as a separate table within our database, which means they didn't necessarily have all the information that an original record did. And so they were a separate concept. And so we took those records and moved them back into the primary mapping table, which gives us a lot more capabilities to do some really cool things and keep up with things better over time and track things better over time. And so that was a huge lift in the last year that has now been integrated across the system. Mentioned Edmaps Pro a lot. We've really worked on this interface in the last year, adding some new sections, custom data sets, offline road maps, which allow you to zoom in closer, as well as the monitoring zones that we're going to talk about later. We've included a key to what each of the different colors mean for the different markers on the map, and integrated documentation within the system to give us a better way, for users to understand what the different icons and all mean within the app. This is the tool for revisits. This is how the easiest way for you to go on and download data for the area you work in and mark something as treated, and document that change over time. Mention the offline maps, both the aerial maps and the street maps, and we put together this graphic of where we've created those offline maps for. So the orange states are where those have been created. If you are working with Edmaps Pro and you need offline maps for your individual counties, then please reach out to us and we will make sure that those get processed and get added for your counties. Photo projects, we continue to improve in Edmaps. This really is a great tool that you're going to hear a little bit about throughout the day, but a way to show that before and after picture, and show how things have changed and line them up very easily. as well as incorporating KML underlays, project area maps that can go in and go under the point, so you can see, like in the bluish purple here, an area of where the project is, so you can make sure that you're working on points within that area. Some other cool stuff that's been added to Edmaps Pro, being able to navigate through Google Maps or Apple Maps directly to a point. For verifiers, being able to do verification directly in the app, as well as contest a record if something is not what it was originally, if you think something's wrong there. Mentioned videos, we've added a good set of videos to show different tasks within Edmaps Pro, and those are all available through the website. We've also been looking at the data a lot and going, okay, let's take a species like kudzu. How have our maps changed since we originally launched the system to now? And so here's an example of what kudzu distribution looked like in 2006, what it looks like today, and then using some of the climate maps, what the potential for the spread of the species is. And so this can really give you a good perspective of how far we've come and where we may be going. We've also been taking habitat suitability maps and underlaying those on the map. And here's one we did for a stink bug, as well as one we did working with the Midwest Invasive Plant Network to take and do habitat suitability maps, in this case for Tree of Heaven, and then show what areas would be suitable for Tree of Heaven, and then have that under the actual Edmaps distribution map. Added some other map types for different applications, whether they be grid maps, looking at previous year versus current year, time-lapse maps, maps with linked graphs to tell more of the story. We've split up the Edmaps tools and training page into 2 separate pages to make the materials more accessible. And we're continuing the QA/QC through emails that are sent to us to look for mistakes, have ways to fix bad shapes, have ways to correct data downloads that may fail, and in other ways just to make sure the data coming in is looking the way it should. We also added in the last couple of years the protected area database from USGS. So when a record goes into Edmaps, if it was found on National Park Service land, Forest Service land, or BLM land, or any state lands, then it's automatically geo-referenced to that, and that shows up as part of the record. Real quick, and I'm already over time, but one of the things that we did in preparing for today is we took the feedback from last year's summit. Last year's summit, we had 36 different speakers and panelists talking about a lot of topics. All of that data is available both on NAISMA's website, NAISMA's YouTube channel, and the Edmaps website. But we really listened to what you said, and what kind of additional training materials did you want? Videos. So that's why we've created these videos for Edmaps Pro, and are going to create them for the other tools. Short, very to the point videos to help you remember what you may have learned in the training. We also know that you were interested in, some of you are already tracking management activities electronically, but a lot of you want to be. So we're going to continue to talk more about the ISM track and the other tools to help track management activities. We realized that a lot of people weren't signed up for alerts. And so one of the things we did was make sure that one of the talks today is about Edmaps alerts and how you sign up for them, so you can learn and be alerted when something new is found. About half of you knew how to query data, but we're going to go more in depth into that today to really give you an overview of how you can use the data from Edmaps, as well as view it in different ways. So looking at today's agenda, we've got a great lineup of speakers. After I finish here, then Joe LaForest is going to talk about a completely new concept in Edmaps called projects, and how you can use them, and how they work, and how they can help you manage your data. And this has been something our users have asked for a lot. And so we're really excited about kind of starting to launch that today. And then of the only recorded presentation today, Tricia Becky with the Morton Arboretum, who was not able to be with us this week, she pre-recorded her presentation, but she's going to talk about a really cool thing that they've been doing with monitoring for spotted lanternfly and documenting tree of heaven better in Illinois. And so very good tool there that I think will be applicable to a lot of the users, a lot of other states as well. And then Jerry Caldwell with Twilla County, Utah, and Monica Chandler with Minnesota Department of Agriculture are going to talk about pros and cons of using points and polygons, and how people have thought about this and spent a lot of time thinking about why we should use points or why we should use polygons, so you don't have to. And so we're really, those back-to-back presentations are going to be a good overview of those concepts. And then Rebecca Wallace is going to talk about downloads, alerts, save queries, how you get the data out. We're going to take a short break, and then Aaron Eager with Utah Department of Agriculture and Food is going to talk at the state level, how can you use data and how powerful data can really be. And then Justin Bush with the Washington Invasive Species Council is going to take things and go back and look at all taxa. How can we mobilize the public to report all taxa? And they've got some really interesting stories on things that have happened in Washington over the last few years. Rebecca's going to come back and she's going to talk about verification tools and how verification works, and different enhancements to that for our verifiers. I'm going to wrap up with some of the next steps, things that we're doing, things that we're going to be doing, and how we plan on improving customer support in the future. So I'm a few minutes over, but we're going to switch now to Joe, and he's going to talk about projects.
Thanks, Chuck. Do you want to take any time to look at any of the questions, or you just want me to go into projects?
Go into projects, and I'll look at the questions through the questions thing while you're talking.
There have been some great ones that people have put into the Q&A section so they didn't get lost in the chat, and I think you'll have fun answering those.
Yeah, and some of these, if they're just for y'all's standpoint, if we don't answer it in the Q&A, please stick around at the end and we'll talk about them if they're larger topics that need to be talked about.
I'm Joe LaForest. I'm one of the other folks here at the Bugwood Center here in Tifton, Georgia. And as Chuck mentioned, I'm talking to you today about projects, what they are and how they work. The reason I'm on this talk is because we've been using projects more on the agricultural side of what Edmaps does. And a lot of what was built out for this was bringing that back over to the natural area side and helping to make those two concepts work together. As Chuck pointed out, partnerships are a big thing that we do. It's one of the reasons our program's been successful as it has, because we don't try to do it alone. It would be really silly for us to try. Without partners dealing with the local issues and us supporting them, our programs wouldn't be nearly as successful. In working with those partners, frequently we're behind the scenes. People may not know that we actually exist or what's going on. And what we've been doing with projects takes that to a step further. That in some cases where you're trying to have an outreach program and work with people to track a certain issue going on, it needs to have the branding and identity associated with your group. And so how do we make that work in a system that Edmaps is covering a whole lot of stuff? How do we tailor that down to what your particular needs may be? So why have a project as the concept we put it in here? The first one that Chuck brought up, keeping reports together for access and data management. If you have people reporting data and it's going into a project, you have an easy way to pull that information together and see what's going on within your campaign. You get a better connection to your data collection network because you know who's reporting into it. You know who's participating in a campaign you've put out there. So it helps you keep an eye on what's going on and start making connections with them. And what we're rolling out is branded communication with those partners, a system for you to be able to track where those folks are, send messages directly to different segments of your audience to help encourage them to continue. That's different than just a general appeal to the public on Twitter or on Facebook or wherever you're trying to reach them. This is more directed to people who have at least shown interest already. You also get access to some special features. Chuck's brought up photo points. There's a system in there for actually generating forecasts for where insects, diseases, or other things may be going on. The monitoring zones that Trisha's going to talk about. Site-based monitoring tools where you have traps, trapping for different moths or other things in the field. All of that needs a project to organize who has access to it, who can do data entry, who can use these different tools. So if any of those features are something you want to be able to do, you first need a project, and then we can turn those on for you. So in creating a project, it's a simple process. We're opening this up to anyone that wants to do it. It's a feature we now have on Edmaps. We're asking you to tell us about your project and decide, is this going to be something you have a small group that you're going to keep closed, you're going to add the members yourself, you're not really advertising it, but you want to use it to group things together? Or is this something you want to promote publicly and let anybody know it exists and recruit people into your campaigns? Are you focusing on all species in a given area or only a few? A lot of the agricultural programs I work with, they're looking at a handful of key pests affecting a commodity, as opposed to some of the groups saying, well, here's my park or my area I'm trying to protect. I care about all taxa. And then who are the leaders? Who are the people that we're likely going to reach out to see what needs you have, how to improve the programs, and other people also working with you are going to reach out to know who those points of contact are. So in creating a project, fairly straightforward. You've already gone into My Edmaps. On the left-hand side, there's a drop-down for projects, and there's an option for create projects. Here you've got the basic information. Give your project a name so people know what to call it. A description, which tells us more about it. A project URL, if you already have a website set up and established for it. Is this project one you want us to advertise out to the public or not? There are good cases for both. And then who are your administrators that will be part of this project? They already have to have Edmaps accounts to get the project started. You had to log in to get to this point anyway. And if there are a list of subjects you're concerned about, here's where you put that in. You can also then go to the dashboard after your project is created, go to Manage Project, you'll see the exact same information. The only thing not showing up on here is the ability to add administrators from this page, because you've already done that. And that'll be covered more in the user management part of what you can do with projects. So you can always come back, tweak, and adjust these things as your project continues to grow and evolve. And as I mentioned before, features that are available upon request, controlling who are the verifiers over a given set of species, and managing experts. Experts in our system are individuals that if they report, we trust they know what that report is. The report would automatically be verified and show up on the maps immediately. And the things for site-based monitoring, photo points, monitoring zones, publishing those forecasts. These are additional ones that any of the administrators of Edmaps can enable for you, and just make sure you have the training to know how to use those tools. In the future, we'd love to get those to be something you can turn on yourself, but we haven't gotten the user friendliness of that to the point that we're comfortable doing that. Next comes in adding your brand. This is all about an identity that when people see it, they're going to know this was part of your project and what was going on. We've made that pretty straightforward. This is what I was working on for University of Arkansas. They're going to be using us this year for a lot of their ag monitoring. And They've got their logo they've added in. They've got the accent color they want for their messages. They have different links for their social media where people can find them and contact information. Every email that gets sent out from the system for anyone reporting into one of the projects carries this brand. Notice that what you don't see on there is a whole lot of Edmaps, a whole lot of Bugwood, a whole lot of anything mentioned there. It's because we're working behind the scenes with these partners, so this becomes a face they can use in their outreach programs. We're happy to be behind the scenes, supporting it all and keeping it going forward. You can always get to that again after you've gone to the project page, to your dashboard, to the left side where Manage Brand is found. And this brand gets used in different ways. This is an example from the ag side that I spent a lot of time on. Ag Pest Monitor. Here's a report for an alert somebody put in for where cucurbit downy mildew was going to be active. And they've got the criteria of their alert set up there. They wanted to know, bless them, anything within 3,000 miles of North Carolina. It's a pretty big range. And you see the report ID that triggered it. This is a report, an alert coming out from the cucurbit downy mildew project. It is using Edmaps behind the scenes to generate these alerts. The same report generated this alert, branded to that particular program. The links in that email are to that program's website. These are the types of customizations we're working on with folks to better represent their outreach program and let Edmaps just be the support behind it that's making things work. In working with users, we realize that everyone you want to add into your project may not need the same abilities, same functionality, or you may want to restrict who can do what. So we've provided user management, and you've seen some of this in the past. Previously, you've seen the ability to manage users individually, that you can add someone into a project and assign them roles. But we've also added in, for this year, adding users in bulk. Because I can tell you with a bunch of the other projects, when you have 30 folks, you're all trying to get into one project, it can be time consuming trying to get all that information in and make sure they have accounts. So going back again to the project management page, here's where you have managing users. I can select a user if they already have an Edmaps account. I can choose what role they're going to be in and add them into my project. If I don't find their account in that lookup, I click that plus button and it says, all right, do you want to make an account for them to help them out? There is an option there to notify the user that allows them to finish the setup of their account, set up their password, and know that they're part of this project. After people are already in the project, you have the options to remove them if needed or change their role through this interface here on the right. And that's made a little easier when you have a whole lot of people in a project. That search box, if you start typing, will filter down to whatever you searched in that list, helping you find people a little faster. The new feature we've got now is right below Manage Users. We call it Invite Users. You've got a project with a whole bunch of folks and you want to get them enrolled pretty quickly. We've made it as simple as possible. One email address per line. Drop it into this box. When you hit submit on this, it's going to check to see if they're already in the project or not. If they're already in the project, it's going to let you know that. If they're not in the project, it's either going to send them an invite to join the account or send them something to create an account and then join the account, join the project, depending on their status. The email looks something like this. You've been invited to join a project. We provide details of the project, and here's where they can accept that invite. Again, working to streamline getting people enrolled into a project and be part of it. Once you have those requests invited out, you then get a status of who is accepted, which ones are pending, which ones have been rejected. So you have a good idea in your efforts who's been joining in and how those invites actually went. And those statuses update as different folks are going to be choosing those options. Now that you've got all these users and different people interested in what you're doing, perhaps even signing up for alerts where they've said, I want to know when there's new reports coming in this project. We have different ways that you can reach out to them to let them know what's going on in the project. And this goes beyond the automated messages that we have for alerts when reports go in. It goes to messages that you can configure and type in what you want to send to them. For this functionality, again, this menu is getting longer with the options for the project. Contact my users. I've got a field here at the top that I can start typing in and looking for which groups I want to look at. I've got administrators, the users, the people in different project roles, but I have anyone that's ever reported into the project. I'd like to contact them. Or I have people that have signed up for alerts that we know they signed up through the project. They're receiving things by our brand. I'd like to let them know what's going on. After that's been selected, we tell you, all right, you're about to send an email to this number of users. What do you want to fill out? You've got your subject line, you've got your message body. It's just like composing an email. This is just helping you manage those lists of people who have been interested in your project or participated. We're also taking steps in the project promotion. We've been receiving requests from folks that really want to get into, I've got something I'm doing, I'm just starting up my effort, but I need a place, I don't have a full website. I want somewhere just to promote what's going on here and maybe let people find me. So we're providing project promotion pages that are still in development that you can recruit new members, raise awareness of it, and provide a contact. Here's an example of what these are going to look like, providing the name for the project right across the top, a nice description of what they're working on, and in this case, here's a sample visualization of what they've been doing. It's showing different sites they've been monitoring within the California area, looking for armyworm. If someone wants to, they could ask to join the project because this one's trying to recruit citizen science of more armyworm reporting sites, or contact the administrators and ask more about the project. It provides those point of contacts without necessarily putting your email first and foremost up on the screen, which some of us don't like spam, so we try to keep our email off as many things as possible, and a way to keep that all together. After we've gotten your project set up, you've got your branding, you've got your people added to it, now is where we get into bringing that data in. Currently, we have a few different routes for data to come in. We've always had web-based reporting. And with that web-based reporting, we've said, all right, this report form they're using and embedding into their website or using on one of ours has a project associated with it. That functionality has existed for a long time and continues to exist. It does require some setup on our side. What we are doing now is working it out into the smartphone apps. So you can actually include project when you're making a report. On Android, this is currently available for Edmaps Pro, and you're going to be seeing the same functionality coming out for iOS. You'll also be seeing it in the main Edmaps app. Functionality is fairly straightforward, that you're going into your app settings, you're going to see a new section in there which has your state list, subject list, and project list. These are things you set up ahead of time, projects you're a part of, subjects you've wanted to have on your species list. It's what you're already doing when you set up Edmaps Pro before you go out in the field. That refresh project list is a new option. It lets us know what projects you're a part of. When you then go in to make a report, you're getting not only what was in your particular species list, but if I've assigned species to be part of a project, those are now showing up in this list of species. So it's a way to make sure everyone's on the same page in a project focusing on just a handful of species. From there, I'm going to make a report, in this case of soybean rust. It automatically selected the soybean IPM pipe project as the one this report's going to go into. That's because it looked up and said, hey, this soybean IPM pipe project has soybean rust as a reporting target. I'm going to go ahead and select that just so my user already is in the project that they already are part of, and this is likely what they want. If that's not what you want, because some projects don't have a list of species or multiple projects are reporting stuff for soybean rust, you can then click that drop down and you get a list of the different species that are the different projects that are accepting data for that project. So as simple as we could possibly make it, putting their project right into the reporting form and a little bit of logic to make sure we're selecting the right things. Additional project features that are in progress that we're working on, we realize with all the stuff we're releasing, people want to know how much it's being used. If I send out an email to a group, I want to know who received it. I want to know we're not just sending emails that are bouncing back. So we're working on providing the analytics for those project alerts, knowing how far your awareness campaign is going, how far your communications do go out, and providing that to you over time, and doing a better job of integrating this with social media. We know that's one of the avenues a lot of our groups use for raising awareness. So how do I quickly take a map that's been generated and share that via social media? How do I take our dashboard of recent reports and share that out in an easy way that still aligns with what your other efforts are? So with that, I'll go ahead. I think we have maybe a second to take a question. I'll look through the chat and see what's there.
Hi, Joe, that was great. Just to keep us on time, and we do have a lot of questions in the chat, so awesome for everybody that's participating. Please continue to put your questions in the Q&A box, and our speakers are typing their answers. And so also for our folks watching, when you click on the Q&A box, you can click on the answered questions, and you can look and see if your question has already been asked and answered. And that will just help us to make sure that we get through everybody's questions. But with that, I invite Chuck. We have Trisha Bethke presentation next. It's a recorded presentation, Illinois Tree of Heaven Monitoring Program Update. Thanks, Chuck.
Hello, everyone. My name is Trisha Bethke, and I'm the Forest Pest Outreach Coordinator for the state of Illinois. I'd like to thank Chuck Bergeron and his team for asking me to provide an update on our Tree of Heaven monitoring program. In Illinois, our Forest Pest Outreach Program is funded through the Plant Protection Act for the U.S. Department of Agriculture and locally in cooperation with the Morton Arboretum. We have developed an early detection and rapid response draft plan for spotted lanternfly, so our EDRR plan. And every other month we get together and we conduct an forest pest outreach meeting, and we make sure that all of our participants, all of our partners, if you will, so APHIS, PPQ, Department of Ag, Bureau of Forestry, our CAPS coordinator, Forestry Extension through the University of Illinois, are all up to date on what's going on, not only with spotted lanternfly, but forest pest education and outreach. So it's very important from our perspective that we have a unified and well communicated and an effective plan put into place and ready to be enacted should we get a positive confirmation of establishment of spotted lantern. In Illinois, we have high risks here. We are smushed and surrounded by other states. We've a lot of 36,000 miles of road. We've got over 9,000 miles of railroad track. We have a number of public use airports, as well as 165 wineries. Over on the right-hand side, what you're seeing in that red is the likelihood of introduction for spotted lanternfly, and I think that was conducted in 2014 or 2015. So you see northern Illinois and southern Illinois and all parts in between. Basically, that's transportation and rail and marinas as well. So we know we have a lot of high risk pathways, a lot of likelihood of introduction. We know that spotted lanternfly is 9 times out of 10 going to come in either through transportation, potentially moving on materials or within air or rail. So we realize what those potential areas for introduction are, and we're trying to develop, how do we figure out like what to do in order to get everybody ready for it, especially because it's been in the forefront of our mind over the last 5 years. Thankfully, it's not found in Illinois yet. So in 2015, I'm going to step back a little bit and give you a background on what we've been doing and kind of give you a little idea of what we're going to work on in 2022. So in 2015, our CAPS coordinator conducted a survey, spotted lanternfly survey. And so those counties that are lit up in green are where the surveys were, and there was nothing found. So thank goodness. Over on the right-hand side, what you're seeing is the positive records for Tree of Heaven on Edmaps. So if you're a funder or you're the outside kind of looking around saying, well, is Illinois really at that much of a high risk when you only have like a handful of host suitable sites, or a host suitability risk is very low if you don't have a lot of records. And yet most people who live in this great state of Illinois would say that Tree of Heaven is everywhere. But really, truly, is it everywhere? And if so, how do we document that? How do we make people aware of where that potential host is? So we got together and we trained volunteers and professionals, and we've been doing it for the last 4 years. It's super exciting. They're a great group of people. We have collaborated with our open lands tree keepers. We have utilized interns, as well as the University of Illinois Extension, the master gardener, the master naturalist, all of our steward volunteers, you name it, youth groups. Our youth love to get out with technology. This is absolutely number one fun thing to do when they have to be outside. If they're working on a merit badge or something, putting a phone app in their hand and asking them to find something has been a real win-win for everyone. We're very, very honored to have APHIS PPQ staff, as well as Department of Agriculture and our utility arborists working in collaboration on this project. So one of the things that I really wanted when you're training the general public, you need something that's super easy to use. So I wanted a phone application that people could download readily, didn't take a lot of data, and it was just basically easy to use and yet very effective. And we found that. We found that with Edmaps Pro. So we got them to download it either on their phone or their tablet. We were able to train them on how to add a new record, as well as manage their own data. So they can manage it on the desktop, that would sync with their phone app. And it is very easy to use. And we have had great positive feedback on the application. And I'll be perfectly honest, where we've had hiccups in the field and we've been able to send an immediate message, you know what, the Edmaps team responds immediately. So I really appreciate that level of customer service and that level of troubleshooting has been invaluable when I've got people in the field actually trying to figure out what to do next. So you're seeing over on the right hand side, that's just a great data visualization of where these records are starting to occur with people getting out and spotting them. All of the records, any new records, any areas, if you will, if you drop a polygon on the phone, which is super easy and great to do, allows us to show what the density is at that site. So that's also a very good visual tool for us. Each record actually gets verified. So over on the left-hand side, what I'm looking at that is each point, if you will, has a different color coding. And those colors mean something very specific, whether or not it's been removed, whether or not it's been treated, whether or not we're monitoring it, or it's waiting to be reviewed. So again, great data visualization, very, very helpful. When people can see something in their hand on their phone and they realize that the record that they drop and when they submit it now becomes part of a data set, is very rewarding for them. And just like that, in Illinois, wait for the drum roll. 2018, we had about 46 records. We were kind of dusting things off and getting people trained up, and didn't really roll it out to train volunteers or the general public because we wanted to get all the kinks out, if you will, and kind of work through some monitoring protocols. But in 2022, I am proud to tell you that we have over 2,164 positive confirmations of Tree of Heaven in the state of Illinois. And that translates into 100% positive county records in Illinois. This was accomplished not only by people getting out and actually mapping the distribution, but we used, there was a portion of iNaturalist data that was migrated over, and we've been able to ground truth that data as well. So we feel very confident that we have 100%. And believe me, the fact that the state is lit up in green, and if I'm thinking about how do I get more funding for education and outreach and training, you know what, having that kind of data visualization to include in my accomplishment reports or my grant requests is very significant. In 2021, we decided that now that we got all these records and now that we got this big data set, what do we do with it? And we wanted to make sure that, you know, as we were coming out of COVID, we were giving people safe opportunities to gather and get out and work in the field and actually work on something that's extremely valuable to the state. So through an update and several updates, which have been really fantastic, Chuck and his team were able to develop the capability of creating a monitoring zone. So not only could I have the records, but I could actually just touch an area, kind of click onto it, create a polygon or whatever size shape is appropriate. And then within those records, within that monitoring zone, then change colors. So that says to me, the person that's monitoring or managing the project, you know what, that I've included all of these zones. I could change the zone, the layout, to include a larger area. And I think that that's been very helpful, as last year we saw that all of our interns that were working on this were actually getting out and doing a lot more revisits than we had originally intended. So we're super excited about that. The other thing that it allowed us to do within the monitoring zone is to develop a monitoring protocol specific for that site. Also to look at that area and figure out what industry is there. So do we have any type of landscape material, any type of transportation yards actually where the trucks come in and sit or the rail cars come in and sit. And from there, if we can identify it within a monitoring area, then I can give that targeted education and outreach to the volunteers that are, and the staff that are monitoring in that area, so that they can be fully prepared to distribute outreach material if needed. So I love this capability. I love the capability of being able to expand the zones as needed, as well as being able to visually monitor them. Additionally, I'll tell you that it's very helpful geographically to show somebody a picture of the state and have these monitoring zones all color-coded to show the geographic breadth of our monitoring efforts. So this is what it looks like on the phone. This was taken right from my phone, and I was in Springfield, like, here's the monitoring zone, here are the points within that. And then you can open the form, and then you can also, if you'd like to, you can get directions that take you right to that record. This is absolutely critical when you are trying to manage a lot of people at a large geographic scale. They can get to their records and they can go from point A to point B pretty easily. And so this is something that most people may not think is important, but it's been a lifesaver. Certainly if you're spending a time in your car and you're doing a field day, you want to be able to get as many points as you possibly can, and utilizing this directional tool is very helpful in that regard. So looking at it when you're going up to do a revisit, these are new forms that we tested late last summer and early fall. Basically, you just ask the question, is Tree of Heaven still there? Yes, no. Has it been removed? You can say, did you see spotted lanternfly? Well, 99.9% of the time, the answer was no. Fortunately or unfortunately, one of our monitors hit the yes button and ding, 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 forms came out. People had their alerts in their email. It was extremely extremely effective and fast. And believe me, I was driving, had to pull over and just kind of stop what I was doing and look at the information. And I'm glad it happened because it allowed us to say, this really works. If somebody sees it, it's real time. And so I think that that's very important. That said, when you have volunteers and staff out monitoring a large area on the same days, you're going to get a lot of records. So a couple of our stakeholders have asked if we batch them, so they do. They can batch those. I get mine individually. There also, each record is reviewed, so I'm a reviewer, so that's very helpful for me as well. The other big important piece of monitoring is trying to quantify how much time does it take to actually do the monitoring. And this information is going to be critical should we get an establishment and we need to be writing a grant to get funding. So now I'm able to figure out about how much time is it going to take, and with that time, how much labor is going to be associated and transportation needed. So very, very useful tool. Hope we'll never have to use it, but if we do, that is there. So I think that that is a very, very, very useful. Really appreciate that. This is just a snapshot of our new records for review. So this is a great overview. It comes in an email. You can download the PDF. So if I need to actually have a physical copy, I can. I get the new revisits added. I get my daily summary. You can kind of break them up. You can batch them. So it's very flexible based on what your reporting requirements are and what your review time is. You know, how much time you have to review, maybe batching it is better or not. I prefer to have them individually so I can review each one. I love this feature. This is one of my favorite things, being able to monitor the dashboard. So I can see what everybody's doing in real time when they're out there. Not only can I see what they're doing, I can see the species. I can figure out who's doing what and how long it took, how many users we have. Last year we had over 591 revisits and negative spotted lanternfly records. Yay! This was well worth celebrating, to be honest with you, because we kind of got down to the interns and they took the lion's share of this work. So Kelly Estes and her team really did a fantastic job just taking this updated EDDMapS Pro and taking it out into the field and then allowing me the opportunity to look at it on the back end and see what's working. And we're very, very excited about it. Very impressed with it as well. Again, I mentioned you can do report by species, you can do report by sources. What you're seeing over on the right hand side is kind of who's using what. Are they using iPhone? Are they using Android? Are they doing it on their web? On their desktop? This is very important when you're spending time developing training tools. So I know that the users that I have are using iPhone, so I would have a tendency to shift my conversation more towards the unique features within that app, if there are any nuances or any difference. And I actually don't think that there are very many, but it's important as well. Looking by county and by reporter, so who's active in what county. I think it's really interesting too to show which county is not being monitored. Where do we need to drive more people to or get local volunteers? So this is very, very helpful. Also, it's very important to see how many records are within one county and how many revisits are out there. So we're demonstrating that Cook County is a high priority and we're spending a lot of time and effort there. So that's, again, a very report for us. This is another fantastic project administration tool. I can add users, I can change my zone, I can manage my alerts. I can set this dashboard up to do exactly what it is that I want to do and capture the data and present it visually so that I can better communicate the effectiveness of our program. The query data allows us to look at location with records, look at the coordinates, look at the number of new locations as well as revisits. Again, and over on the right hand side, this is just a snapshot of the query, so you can kind of tailor it to what you want, but I apologize for it being a little bit small. Maybe it's a little bit larger in the actual presentation. but it's very, very flexible, and we've gotten a lot of use out of it, and we'll focus our efforts in. So what we're going to do this year is actually take the monitoring zones and make it look more similar to zones within the Illinois Department of Natural Resources. So what you're seeing right now is all of the district foresters. And I don't have a current map because they're changing the zones right now. And so once they get established, hopefully by mid-June, I will actually develop our monitoring plans or our monitoring zones based on the counties that they have individually. And I thought it would be helpful to mirror that. So should we get an establishment, we would have a direct contact with the DNR forester as well as many others. But geographically, I think it allows us to communicate and collaborate more closely with our district foresters and as well as our APHIS PPQ staff. So this is something that's new for us. We're going to take it out and test drive it and see how effective it is and know that we have the capability of making changes if we need to. We're going to review our priority zones. I think there's going to be some targeted efforts along the Ohio River, so between Indiana and Illinois and Missouri, looking at those industries and communities along the river, just trying to make sure that we've kind of covered that high-risk pathway. We're also going to expand our local volunteer base, database, or contact base, because we're ready. So we've done the work, we've tested out, we've figured out what works, and we've improved kind of where it needed to be tweaked, and I'm comfortable rolling it out on a much larger scale in 22 and 23 as well. And then again, another focus obviously is just outreach. So how do we keep taking that same message and getting it out in different ways where it's actually resonating with people? And we want to make sure that we're constantly focused on that. One of my new initiatives based on what's going on in Indiana with an establishment, DNR in Indiana said that, and PPQ and Department of Ag said that the green industry was significant in getting messaging out. So we've been focusing in on the green industry, and we're going to be looking at training up potential staff within the green industry to help us out to do some monitoring of Tree of Heaven. So super excited about that opportunity. Enough about the resources. So when I train volunteers, and I know it's just a one-shot deal and I'm here, I'm always able to get out and help them in the field, either by phone or by Zoom, or if I'm close by, obviously I can get out and meet them. But I always say to them, if you have a question and you're unsure of something, get on and look at EDDMapS and pull up their tools and training, look at those videos, look at those PDFs. They are absolutely invaluable. And I know that Chuck and his staff have spent a tremendous amount of time developing them, so please utilize them. We do all the time. And then in Illinois, we have a Facebook page. It's the Illinois Invasive Species Awareness and Management Facebook page, and we utilize that to put out not only updated resources, but important communication as well. So super excited about those, and then we've got other resources as well that I'm happy to share with all of you should you be interested. I want to thank you very much. This is my contact information, tbethke@mortonab.org. Telephone number 630-719-7953. I want to thank you very much for your attention. That is not me, and if I could ever get my hands on that cute costume, I will definitely buy it, and you will definitely see me in it, that's for sure. But again, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Connect with me if you have any questions.
All right, well, thank you, Tricia. That was a great presentation. Next up, we have Jerry Caldwell, lessons learned with point and polygon data.
All right, see my screen okay?
Yep, looks great. And I
All
hear
righty,
there.
great. All right, well, thanks for having me. Chuck asked me to talk a little bit about why we use points more over polygons, some of our trials and tribulations of things we have learned also. So anyway, with that, we'll get started. So why we went with points? Well, first off, some of it was multiple species that were all in the same area. We've also had different size infestations of those infestations in the same area. It also gave us a very accurate location to return to. So when we all started about, I don't know, it's been a few years, we had very limited navigation technology. We did have nicer Trimbles occasionally and or mostly Garmins to do the work. And then also the big part was we had a lot of historical data that some of us and some of our predecessors had already had logged in. So we went on a crusade to get all the points we could get loaded up into Edmaps. And in 2013, we had 130,000 plus points we had put into Edmaps. And we realized that we had a lot of points that were really stacked on top of each other, really close. So in 2019, we combined 201,000 points down to 129,000. The old points were stacked to the earliest saved record and added as a revisit to that point. And the way that we did that was, well, this is what our map looked like at first here. So it was kind of a big, we called it a big red blob. So anyway, Chuck and his guys determined that if we rounded off to the 4 decimal places in decimal degree coordinates, that was 11.1 meters. So when you drop that, it put everything into the same point in that 11 meter area, 33 feet, which wasn't too bad. If you put me in 33 feet, I should be able to find a weed. So anyway, we did that. The original data still has the original the coordinates on it. So nothing was lost. So anyway, we narrowed this down by 70-something thousand points to start with. So anyway, I'll go into a little more specifics here. We have a weed around here. We probably have the majority that's mapped already in the United States, squirrel's knapweed. It's a very tall, very invasive plant. It is kind of hard to kill. It is very large, has lots and lots of seeds on it. So that's an infestation, and that's one of the plants. So in 2018, this is what the map looked like before we did the consolidation. And this is just a smaller area. There's thousands and thousands of points. We started out with 33,000 plus points of squirrel's knapweed that we had on the map. So it's quite congested, stacked on top of each other. So it became 13,000 points for squirrels when we pulled them within 11 meters of each other. So then the map looked like this, and this is the 2022 map as of right now. So you can see the difference in here. When we realized that we were creating a red blob, we needed to find a way to show progress on this. This is when we determined that we would try and figure out a way with Chuck to do revisits on it and how to show progress on it. So you'll notice this is fairly new on here with the little pie charts on the populations, and some of these here you'll see there's 43 points in a spot here, and roughly half of it still positive, and the yellow is the treated and the green is eradicated or not present. So in the last 4 years on squirrel's knapweed, we still have 14,499 positive. We've treated 13,576 of these points, and we've determined that 4,211 of these points are eradicated or no longer present. We never want to take them off the map because we still want to return to them. So this is what our new map now looks like. So we're actually showing quite a bit of difference from this down to this. So squirrels, knapweed, this is one of our original slides we had. They assumed that it all started at this silo here over. This is just right near the border of Juab County and Tooele County. This is an old photograph we obtained where there were a bunch of people. They figured they had about 5,000 acres and they would just watch it. We were up to about 200,000 points when basically Kevin and I next door started working on this project. So now this is that area right there in the middle of this map where it all started. And this is what our map looks like today. We started in the heart of it and worked our way out using the point system so we could navigate to individual points. Once you start blanketing an area and you need to go back to a specific point to locate that item. This is on a big scale, big project. We still do use polygons to define our projects. We worked with Chuck on we now call it project areas on Edmaps Pro, but we can also have the capabilities of putting, it started out as KMLs. And we put road lines on here. When you're out of service and you don't have maps, you can put your, KMLs of your dirt roads and D roads, we call them around here on there. So you can navigate a little better when you lose all service to everything. Some of these areas we go to are quite remote. So this is actually starting to look like we can actually show our bosses that we really do something for a living. So now, probably one of the biggest reasons that we did the Edmaps Pro app when we started to do this with Chuck and the guys is we need to go back to a specific point and we need to navigate right to that point, no matter where that point's at, in service, out of service. This is a point that my guys found. They found this lone black henbane plant right at the edge of the forest. It's actually inside the forest boundary by about 50 feet. There's their kiosk. They took this picture, they sprayed it, went back and picked up the plant a week later because they were worried about the seed dropping. I need that plant on the screen, on my map, on my app, so I can go back to it. There's one other point down here below. They did the same thing too, and they haven't seen one there for a couple of years. So they determined it's eradicated, but it still shows up on the map so we don't ever forget about it. If we would leave one plant there without revisiting that one spot and going back there, the seeds on that plant, there's 776 seeds in one head, about 320 on an average plant. That's 250,000 seeds almost on one plant. The odds of having one grow next year in that spot are really, really high. And that's part of the biggest reason that we want to navigate back to a single point, in our case, versus a polygon. Not to say that points don't do very similar things that polygons do. They overlap and it's hard to determine sometimes quantities and acreage and stuff. So we're also gonna, this is our next task is a few places. We've got a contractor in the state that has this really neat technology that will actually spray and make a polygon every time it pulls the trigger on a sprayer, and it leaves little polygons. So it's really starting to stack points up on specific species. So this is probably next on the what to do list. This contractor works clear across the state, does all kinds of stuff, does wonderful work for us and everything, and controls lots and lots of weeds. So we just want to make sure we get the data usable without making it too big of a headache. So this is a nice little picture I took a few years back. How would you map this 1,000 or 100 square foot? There's 5 noxious weeds and a couple of other invasives in about 100 square foot area, all in one little spot. So it's just a little food for thought here of, how would you do that? Hound's tongue, Scotch thistle, Dyer's woad, hoary-cress, field bindweed. There's a Mullins in there, lots of weeds. So it's just kind of kind of a food for thought. So anyway, thanks to our sponsors that we have, the Forest and UDAF, and UDAF's a big supporter of us and these projects, and a big, they supply a lot of money for us to help do these projects with Edmaps, with Chuck and the gang there. So anyway, all right, thank you. That's it for me. Any questions, I guess, put them in the chat.
All right, thank you so much, Jerry. I'm getting a little echo now. Sorry about that. Okay, hopefully that's better. Next up, we have Rebecca Wallace from UGA. User tools, downloads, alerts, and saved queries.
Elizabeth, Monica Chandler is next, and then Rebecca, sorry.
Oops, I guess we have a change of schedule. Sorry about that.
Should I just go ahead and introduce myself?
Yes, please.
Okay. Hi, I'm Monica Chandler with the Minnesota Department of Agriculture, and I'm going to do a follow-up presentation to Jerry's and talk about what we've learned over the long term in working with our point and polygon data. So, okay, so if we have really small infestations like what Jerry was pointing out, where a point is the best way to represent that infestation, then by all means use a point. And this is an example with this blue mustard. I'm so proud of this. A volunteer found this blue mustard. It was the first and only report in the state. It all fit in a 1-gallon Ziploc. That was amazing. And there was no additional blue mustard at the site after this was hand pulled. So that was like the easiest infestation I've ever dealt with. And a point represents that really well. Polygons work well for most of the infestations that we work with. They are more expansive. Here you can see an example with baby's breath, that white flowered plant that you see spreading across a grassland. Polygons define the infestation really well, and they calculate the area for us. This gives us more accurate data about exactly how expansive infestations are. And when you start to sum infestations for either your own data summaries or researchers use these data, it really gives us a more accurate picture of how many acres of a given weed species we have. So here you can see an example where there had been multiple reports at the same location of spotted knapweed, and they were point reports, and so they really weren't telling us about what that infestation was really like. So this was updated with a polygon, and then 4 points were deleted. So the original report was kept, and then a polygon drawn, and then we deleted 4 reports. When using polygon data in ISM Track, it's a whole lot easier. So ISM Track is invasive species management tracking system, and it's within Edmaps. It's currently available for Minnesota and Wisconsin, and will soon be available for Alberta. So it's not available for everyone to use, but when we started working with our data in ISM Track, you can see here a site defined in white, infestations in red, and then areas where management had been done in yellow. So it really allows us to better say what work was done on what areas of an infestation. Also with ISM Track, it was really difficult to select so many points to show where you were doing treatments. This is an example with Dalmatian toadflax, where every plant in the area had been reported, which gives you a nice picture of what was happening on the ground, but is really hard to work with when you have so many points to then mark as treated. And then with biological control data, Again, we work with this in ISM track, and you can see the red infestation polygon. This is spotted knapweed. This is an old gravel pit, and now is a recreation area. And so there's a lot of spotted knapweed in this old gravel pit. And you can see the points where biological control agents were released, or if there's a monitoring report of a bioagent. So you can see those individual reports and the infestation overall. And because we work with large infestations in general for biological control, it's really helpful to find those infestations with polygons rather than points. And this is one example that you can see here. Here you can see there are large numbers of spotted knapweed reports in this area. And so I had thought, well, there would be vast infestations and maybe we should be doing biocontrol work there. But then when I zoomed in, you can see on the right that there are really just a lot of points. And so I don't know, based upon all those points, whether this is really an expansive spotted knapweed infestation or just many people had reported it over time. I suspect there's a fair amount of spotted knapweed there, but it really would take a site visit. I can't look at the data and see what the level of infestation is. And so here I've just been singing the glories of polygons, but sometimes I could still run into trouble. And I created this problem that we're looking at right now, where we had crews mapping an Asian bittersweet in a park. And you can see what I failed to do was really clearly delimit where each team should be mapping. And you can see that they created polygon after polygon. So we can still end up with some messy data, even when we're trying our best. The most important thing is to really just think about how your data will be used and what will work best for the way that you and the folks that you work with will be using the data. There are many different partners involved with data and developing some of these tools that we use, and I want to acknowledge them. And then I want to thank you for this opportunity, and I hope you can learn from some of my mistakes and avoid them, making any mistakes like that yourselves. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Monica. And I apologize for my error earlier. I just misread the agenda, so I'm sorry that I botched that up. But thank you so much for being here and for that great presentation. We appreciate it. Okay, next up, Rebecca Wallace with UGA, User Tools, Downloads, Alerts, and Saved Queries. I can see your screen, Rebecca, but I cannot hear you.
Turned on my video, did not turn on my audio.
Now you're loud and clear, good.
Yeah, all right. So I'll be talking about user tools as they relate to different things you can do in Edmaps. So it's just gonna be, I'll be going over, I'll tell you what I'm going over in just a second. So just to give you an idea of who I am, I've got a master's in crop and soil sciences. I started with Bugwood in 2011. I started as the Edmaps data coordinator, but they promoted me to Edmaps coordinator at some point. They just started calling me that. And I also became the Bugwood images coordinator in 2019. So with regards, especially to Edmaps, my primary tasks end up including data coordination. I still do that. It didn't just go away with the word data going away, which involves quality assurance, quality control, uploading data, verification, working with the verifiers in all different capacities, helping people with data queries. I also work on presenting to people and training sessions, creating training materials, information materials, And I also work with onboarding programs into Edmaps. So some of you have talked about a program you've been working with in the chat and in the questions. And so if you want to onboard your program, I'm probably one of the people you're going to be talking to with regards to answering questions. So what I'm actually going to be talking about today are the alerts, the user alerts, data downloads, and the saved queries concept. So when you are wanting to learn about alerts and see how you can create alerts, you would first start at My Edmaps, and then you would click on alerts on the left, and this is the page you would be taken to. So you can see that there are a number of parameters. So your notifications are based on these parameters. So you would say what country, state, perhaps county. You don't have to go all the way down to county. You can say an entire state. And then you would, if you are interested in more specific than just everything that comes into your state or county, you can say, I want to have my division to be plants or insects, or you can have a more specific category such as vines and shrubs, or you can even go all the way down to species. We do have some people who are interested in very specific species and getting alerts when the records are verified of those species in their geographic area. There's also the checkbox at the bottom for first occurrence. That means that it would be the first verified record in that geographic area for that species. So some people just want to know when something's reported or verified for the first time in a particular area, and they don't really have any interest after that. So we accommodate that with these alerts. Once you've set up your alerts, you will get emails as your parameters are met, and the email looks like this. It tells you what your parameters are. You can go and adjust your parameters straight from the email. If you click on any of the blue number links, that'll take you to that specific record so that you can go and view it. As you notice, I'm signed up for people verifying things as unknown and unlisted so that I can help put those in the right species. So if you think you've missed an email, if you think that something was supposed to come to you and it didn't, you can actually now view your messages online. So if you go to click on your name in the top right, click on messages, it'll take you to this page where you can search for the different types of messages that you think you might be missing or interested in general. So in this case, I chose alerts, and I selected the top alert, which took me to this, this email, which looks like the email you just saw. But that way you can see things online as well. So downloading data. There are a few different methods of downloading data. You can download through My Edmaps, you can download through our advanced query tool, or you can download all of the data for a single species through the distribution maps. But that is very rarely recommended because it usually has more data than someone would want. And you'll get to see what I mean when I'm talking about the advanced query tool. So I'm going to start off with the My Edmaps download. So to get to that page, you would click on My Edmaps and then Downloads, and it would take you to this page. So on this page, you will see at the top, there are a couple links, download my reports, and then there's the New Invaders Watch program reports. So that would be my own reports at the top, and this would include records that for coordinates I have marked private. I would still see those coordinates. I would see my unreviewed records and so forth. With project reports, that'll be records associated with a particular project. And at the bottom, you can see there's a table of my requests. And if I click on download, I can download that file there. But when you download a file, download a data set from Edmaps, you get an email as well that says, hey, you requested data. Here's your link to download your data. To get to the Advanced Query Tools page, you would click on the Tools option under the Tools and Training menu option, and then you would click on Advanced Query Tools, which is at the bottom left under Database Tools. The Advanced Query Tools page has a lot of parameters, so I just wanted to kind of zoom in on just what you were expecting the whole thing to kind of look like with your ability to still read what these filters are. So you can filter by reporter, dates, species, and so forth. So if we look at the whole page, you'll see that there's also eradication status, which is, you know, you're positive, you're treated, negative, and so forth. You can search through specific invasive species lists. So if your state noxious weed list is what you're looking for, if we have it, you can say, I want all these species in my query, location information, and so forth. When you have your filters applied to return the results you're actually interested in, you would then click submit. Now, again, requesting all the data for a species or a whole state can result in a very large data set, and you may not be allowed to actually download that data set because we have a current cap at 200,000 records. So that's why I talk to people about, okay, well, what are you actually interested in? So we can narrow this down to what you're going to be wanting so that you're not just getting a whole bunch of stuff you're going to throw away anyway. So once you've clicked submit, you will then be taken to a page where if it's under 200,000 records, you'll see the map and you'll see your query parameters and a summary of the results at the top. So your query parameters are on the left. So Jerry, I picked your county. I hope you feel honored. If I zoom in on the results summary, you're going to see a lot of numbers there. So what these numbers mean, when we talk about locations, we're talking about basically an occurrence, a distinct place, species, and date. So anytime we're talking about locations, that's what we're talking about. As I mentioned, there is the concept of private where the records are not shared publicly once the record is available, the whole record itself is available publicly. So in this case, Jerry's county has over 6,000 essentially locations with records, but only about not quite 16,000 are shared publicly. The coordinates are shared publicly. When they're not shared publicly, they're just known at the county level. The next, it says that there's a certain number of infested acres. Now, this information is only available when we know how many infested acres exist. We do have a fair amount of data where we don't have infested acres as a field that was reported to us. So this is basically at minimum what we know. New locations. So there's a lot of new locations where there were added for a specific time period. Those are new original records. There are records, so when we talk about records, that includes the original records and usually as well as the revisits. In this case, it includes the revisits. And then there are over, Jerry, you guys are busy. There are over 20,000 revisits in Jerry's county. So that just gives you an idea of what you're seeing when you are looking at that blue box. If you want to download a file, you would go to those links above the map on the right. You have your CSV, which you open in a program like Excel. You have your KML, which is really just useful for shapes on a map. There isn't a lot of databasing you can do with KML files, and those are opened in a program like Google Earth. And then you have shapefile. Now, shapefile, it used to be actually just a shapefile, but we have been producing what are called geo packages. And you can open it in ArcGIS, you can open it in QGIS. It's a way to provide all the data in a more compact file than we were previously. So moving on to saved query, once you create a query and you save it, you can run it many times. This also allows for custom data sets in Edmaps Pro. So some of you may have played around with Edmaps Pro or have seen some of the videos we have about Edmaps Pro. So we have had county data sets for a long time with Edmaps Pro, but now we have these custom data sets. So if you're only interested, say Jerry was only interested in the noxious weeds that are in Tualatin County. Now he's not getting all the other stuff in Tualatin County. He's getting just those noxious weed reports. However, Jerry, you have over 10,000 records in your data set. So you wouldn't be able to download, again, all of the data for Tualatin County. You would have to have something a little bit more compacted and specific. So in this case, I chose another county. We have under 10,000 records. So, and again, 10,000 records is the current cap. And that for the most part has to do with Edmaps Pro and downloading data to Edmaps Pro, but we are working on increasing that cap. So with the save query button, you click on it, and it will save your query, and you can name it. To access your saved queries, again, we go back to My Edmaps, and you click on My Edmaps and click on My Saved Queries, and it'll take you to a table of the queries you've created and named. You can click on any of these queries to run and see the results. Now, these aren't static data sets. These are just the recipe for getting to the data set. So anytime new data is added, whenever you click on the query to run it, it's going to include that new data. If you want to create more data sets, you will click on the Create New Dataset link, and it'll take you to that Advanced Query Tools page to put your parameters in. And then again, all of these are custom data sets you can download the data for in EDDMapS Pro. One thing I didn't mention that I was supposed to and completely blanked on was that with alerts, we are going to be releasing the ability to have the alerts texted to you. So instead of just getting emails, that will be a feature we are going to be releasing or adding very soon. But do we have any questions? We've got a few minutes before the break. So in the chat or well, some people have been putting it in the chat and some people have been putting it in the questions and answer area. So do we have, like I said, any questions about anything relating to the user tools? Now, I just gave you a broad overview and mostly focused on the things that are new. So any existing features I might not have covered very in depth, but I wanted to make sure that these new features that we have built in the last year or so were made known to our public. But hey, someone's liking the saved queries. That's fantastic. Yes, we work with a lot of people who are interested in running a data set monthly, quarterly, or even just yearly. And this allows them to save that. And so they don't have to put in all those parameters each time. And again, because of someone, like Jerry, who has a lot of reports in his county, this will allow him to have a much more specific data set so that he can download it and go out and do the work. Although I'm not sure if he does the work anymore or if his technician's the one running the game at this point. How will we know when EDDMapS Pro is available for iOS? It's already available. The only thing that's not available on EDDMapS Pro iOS is the projects feature. But everything else with EDDMapS Pro is already on iOS. So you can report, you can conduct revisits, you can go and if you're a verifier, you can go out into the field and review records in EDDMapS Pro in the field. There's a lot already out there. It's just right now for iOS, the projects feature has not been added, but that's coming very, very soon.
I see just one more question for you, Rebecca, and I think you may have already answered it, but can I use EDDMapS Pro to manage invasive species on private lands?
Yes, so that's why I was talking about private a little bit earlier. So when you have private records, when they're available to the public, they're just going to show up at the county level. But when you are looking at your data on, say, EDDMapS Pro and you've downloaded it, you'll be able to see those coordinates. So you can conduct revisits to records that are downloaded for you on EDDMapS Pro, but wouldn't be downloadable to other people. If exact coordinates are a problem. Some landowners don't mind having their coordinates out there, but some are very more not secretive, but careful about data about their property being out there.
Awesome, thank you.
Oh, sorry, Sage. When you revisit a point in EDDMapS Pro, is there an option to add the point as a treated, eradicated? Yes, they are. So when you go into EDDMapS Pro, when you look at the revisit form, there are options for positive, treated, eradicated, and negative. So you just pick the one that's most applicable to the type of what happened with your revisit, what's there or not there.
Okay, well, thank you so much. We are now scheduled for a 10-minute break. We have over 50 answered questions in the Q&A box. So thank you so much for asking your questions. And thanks to our panelists for being so diligent about answering those questions. Feel free to continue to put them in. But right now we have a 10-minute break scheduled. We are right on time. So we will see you in 10 minutes. Thank you.